Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of just quickly jump through some data stuff so that you feel like hopefully confident to take on this data project that I'm going to assign for you. It'll be posted on Wolfden, and there'll be the data set, and I'll try to walk you through it. I'll try to walk you through some different process so you're not, so that it's not too overwhelming for some people. But the data set's nice because it very ties into what we're going to talk about today in terms of the theory, which is the comparative advantage. Okay, and that's the first chapter that we're actually covering in the class. So, so let's go ahead and you have the Nunn data set? Is that right? We worked on it last class. I think you guys. I posted it. Did I post it on Wolfden? Let me double check. I think I did, but yeah. Yeah, trade data, that was, that's what we were working on last class. So I wanted to show you a couple of things and talk about them. I wrote about them too on your assignment, but there's a couple of subtle points about the data that are kind of important to notice. So one of the first things we have here, so we obviously have variation across country and industries. And then you get this variable that's really key, which is the exports to other countries. And because we're looking at things on an industry level, like here we get lodging, right, for Angola, you see? Then this is really the exports, the lodging exports of Angola to the world, right? And the idea that we're trying to dig at, remember, is that we're trying to understand why some countries are have more an advantage than others. And we're trying to understand why there are different patterns of trade that we observe, okay? So, so what we'd like to do is actually compare across industries and find out, which industries Angola is, is best at, right? Now this is going to do this for all industries for Angola and also other countries. The one thing we run into problems when we start looking at, when we look at this data across all the countries, is that we end up with what's called scale effects. And that's that some countries are just bigger than other countries, right? So you look at a really big country, it's got a lot of resources, it can do a lot more, it's obviously going to export more. So if we're comparing the lodging of Angola to the lodging, or we could just say another thing, fishing in Angola to the fishing in, there's some countries that are just much bigger, they're going to produce more fish probably, or they might produce anything like this, right? Soybean, or I don't know, cheese man, that's a weird industry. I don't know what that is. Cheese manufacturing, that must be, right? Cheese manufacturing in Angola, it's 0 exports, animal products, 28, okay? So with animal products, you think, Angola's small, it's a smaller country maybe, you can't compare it to a really big country because of this different scales, right? What we want to dig out is what's Angola good at relative to another country. So we want to cleanse out these scale effects. The technical way and the theoretical way, what we're going to talk about later, is scale effects, another way of saying absolute advantage. That's a very important point, and we're going to drive it home, is that we have what's called absolute advantage, where a country can produce more of something, okay? And then you get comparative advantage, where a country's good at producing a certain thing, right? And just because you're good at it doesn't mean you can necessarily produce more. It means you can do it more efficiently. That's the key point, is that you can have a small country that has an advantage in a certain industry, not because they can do more, but because they're actually just, they're good at it. It doesn't mean to be good at something. It means you can do it faster, you can do it more efficiently, you can do it with less resources. And so you see this is a problem here with this measure, because this measure, if I compare, again, if I compare animal products with Angola to animal products in the US, clearly the US is going to have a bigger number, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're better at it. So how to create a measure and a metric that's going to capture this and cleanse out these scale effects, cleanse out the absolute advantage. How do you do that? The way that the authors do it is they divide this exports for this industry by the total exports for that country. So they take the total exports for Angola, you divide the total exports for Angola. You notice this is the same number across all Angola, right? So we're going to divide this exports for, say, lodging by the total exports, and that gives us an export share for that specific industry. Now, when we compare those shares, we can see that Angola has, well, a very small share here, right? A lot of these numbers are very small. So one interesting thing is actually, I just want to show you something. Let's look at something. I'm just going to scatter plot this and show you a pattern in the data. Insert, plot, scatter. So this is the plot of all the countries and their shares. Okay, this is the share. And one thing, look at this plot. What do you really notice? What do you really see here? How are these distributed? Mostly at the bottom, right? And there's a few that are up really high. What does it mean if it has a share of 1? What does that mean? It means the country doesn't really do anything else. It means almost all of its production is in that industry, right? So what you see is like a few, so you see that these are the shares, like you said, most of them are at the bottom. There's a big concentration down here, and then there's like a few guys that are spiked up pretty high. It means what you see is a pattern here is you see, this is sort of an example of, you see concentration. You see that countries, there seems to be some evidence here that there's some concentration of industry exports within a country. That's what you actually see in this pattern. You can kind of get a glimpse at it too by looking, let me delete this. If you look at the exports, you notice a lot of zeros here, right? There's a lot of industries have zeros. So there's another example where you can kind of see some type of concentration. So these are the kind of patterns we're trying to understand. Like why are they concentrated? Why are they concentrated in what they're concentrated in, right? That's what we're digging at here. And so yeah, so you get the idea is that we're interested in this as a share. So this column N is the variable actually that we're really interested in, and this is what's going to be a measure for our what's called revealed comparative advantage. This is the share of this this particular industry's exports in their total exports. Now remember, the idea is that why are some countries, why are they better at doing something than why are they better at one thing versus another? Well, we say maybe some industries have more capital that they require, right? Like steel, right? And so you'd think that those kind of industries that are very capital intensive, right, would be naturally produced in countries that have an abundance of capital. That's the idea, right? So that is the idea of comparative advantage. And that's what we have here. We have capital intensity times the capital endowment. And so I'll show you just one way, and this is not a fully robust statistical way, but a way that I'm just going to introduce to you here is you can just do correlations, okay? So what I want you to do in your homework assignment is to really just correlate exports, scale intensity, capital intensity. And you can do that actually with the data, analytics, correlation option, okay? Now there's some lack of proper statistical inference here because anyway, that gets into a little bit more branch of statistics that I'm going to avoid, but right now this is like how I'm pushing. I'm just pushing you to look at correlations. Whether those correlations are actually statistically significant, that's actually something we would have to talk about more statistics. You know, it's like you see something's positive.
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes, sorry.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm getting into the, thank you, yeah. Okay. So, so I was showing the N, column N, and I've highlighted it, is really the one that is going to actually, go ahead.
What's the input range? Exactly for input range. Try to do correlation.
When you do correlation, so it says input range, just go, so go like this. You want to find correlation between variables, go data, data analysis, say correlation, okay. And then he says, what's the input range? Well, to get that, just, you can just highlight across like this, or oops. Let me just clear this out. So clear it out, click on the cell, and then highlight 2 columns like that. And you'll see the column names here and there, and then make sure you have column labels in the first row. Click OK, and it'll give you a correlation matrix, which we talked about how to interpret that last class. Okay. Delete. I'm going to go ahead and do something else too. I'm going to go ahead and plot. So I put this over here. I'm going to go ahead and do a scatter plot too. I should have just kept it. But another cool thing is you can do pivot tables, which I'll show you here real quick. I might put a little tutorial about this on the website or something. But pivot tables just give you a way in Excel to look at different information. So I want to look at the country names, and I'm just going to sum the capital intensity over here. And Excel will just sum all the capital intensities by country. That's what a pivot table does. It can give you summary statistics for a given category. Here we got the country names, and I just summed all their capital intensities to show this is kind of a rough statistic. But one thing I can do with this is I can sort it. I'll go ahead and post this later, by the way, so you can do this. I'll sort. Oops. Let's do more sort options by this. I'll sort it by the sum of their capital intensities. This is capital intensities times their capital endowment ratios. I'm just summing it up across their industries. And let's go ahead and plot this. Actually, I'll just show you what. I'll jump to it. Where's a? Oops. Yeah, pivot plot. Let's do that. Okay. Can you see these? This is for capital intensity and capital endowments. And I'm not sure if you can see can you see the graphs and the countries that are listed? What do you notice about the ones that have the highest values here? What the countries? Yeah, compared to the ones that have a lower endowment over here. So you notice that we have Switzerland, Australia, Italy, Sweden, Japan, Israel. These are developed countries. Okay, these are highly developed countries. On the right side, you got Uganda, Angola, Tanzania, a lot less developed countries, right? So this is starting to, I mean, maybe it was not so surprising that you'd think that, more developed countries are producing more capital intensive kinds of goods, right? But this is showing up in the data here anyway. So that's all I'm going to say actually about this data part of things. I'm going to give you an assignment and post it, and it'll walk you through some things. And then I'll have like what will look like it to be like a quiz, because that's the best way I know how to do it. It'll just ask you for some information, some statistics that you'll have to create using the data set. You'll just type it in and submit it, and that's it. It's labeled a quiz, but it'd be more like a homework. Okay, go ahead.
So when you get the sum of capital intensity by capital endowment, that's telling you like what countries produce the most like capital intensive goods.
That's a rough measure. It's a rough measure. You can play with statistics all kinds of ways, just to give you different ideas. And that was, that's not an extremely proper way, but it's a rough way to just. So, in fact, if you ever play with data a lot, you just kind of do a lot of different types of statistics, and you start to get a feel as to what are the patterns that are convincing you. What are the patterns? If there's a very robust pattern, it typically doesn't matter like how you look at it, you're going to find some kind of pattern there. That's the idea, is that you'll find it kind of goes through a lot of things. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the data side. And now we're going to move on to, I'm going to open this up for people here. Now we're going to move on to the theory, okay? Which will be like what your Pearson's homework is mainly based off of. So let me do a new share once this comes up. Sorry, online, I'll just take a second while my computer's switching over to this other program. So before we talk about Pearson's, has everybody had a chance to get Pearson? Yeah? You guys are all good with that? No? Okay, well, you got an assignment coming up. Okay, so if you haven't had Pearson, you got to get it because we got homeworks that are coming there. Oh, come on. XSplit, don't do that to me. It was just working a minute ago. Why is it doing this to me? Sorry, guys. This is why, oh why? Why would it do that to me? Oh, okay, let me go. Camera not available. Oh, it's used by Zoom. Shoot, Zoom. I see what's going on. So sorry, I'm gonna have to, let's see here. It's not gonna let me do this because I'm on Zoom. Okay, fine. Fine, Zoom. I'll just kick myself out of here and put this up on the screen real quick. So I'll switch over to a different screen for you guys online. Okay. Actually, I know what I need to do. Do I have a chat? Sorry, I saw a couple of people chatted. Can you show your screen? Yeah, and thanks for, I just saw that chat. In the future too, online, if you have any questions, just please pipe up and speak. I'm not necessarily looking at the chat window. Okay. So I'll just share this. We'll have to, I'll get a better visual for everybody later. Have to pardon me on that. But this idea, so let's go ahead and start with the theory, okay? So now you're gonna have to make some abstractions. This will be your first economic model and theoretic model. These models, remember, they're abstract, right? So don't think necessarily real, think like you're cooking up like a fake world so that you can try to analyze it. And that's like what we're gonna do here. So in this world, we have, you're gonna have basically two goods only, okay? You can have two goods. So you get, oh, this is upside down too. Well, that's not good. How will we do this? They're solved. You guys online can see this or no? If I don't hear anything, I'm just assuming.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, you good.
Okay, so we get two goods in our model. We could call it like, to keep it kind of consistent, maybe we could call it like a capital intensive and a labor intensive good. So maybe two goods, maybe one, what would be a capital? We could call steel, right? And what would be labor intensive? Farming is also capital intensive in land. That's a land intensive. You could do that. What about just some type of oh my gosh, too early in the morning for guess what industry? Could be like assembly. Could be like assembly. You know, like they have these little iPhone you know, like when they assemble iPhones, they actually have like a million people like in a little sweatshop, like just putting all those pieces together. If you've ever seen it done, and you know, they have these kind of situations. So you can think of almost like a sweatshop type of industry versus like a steel, which is heavy capital. And so the idea is you got two goods, and let's have two countries, okay? Let's have two countries. And the countries are going to be either they're going to be either intensive in, they're going to be abundant in either capital or labor, just to make the point. Okay. I want to expand your view real quickly because I want to tell you like why I'm making these choices because I skipped over some stuff. And that's that the idea is that why do we pick capital and labor? These are the factors of production, okay? These are the primary factors of production. Think like you need to make something, right? You have to have some labor, you have to have some capital. You put the people in the buildings, you put the people in the machines, you pump out some stuff. Are these the only factors? Absolutely not. Okay, just be aware. There's also materials. You got material abundance, right? You have like, say you have like a lot of a certain type of mineral that you need to make this stuff. That's a material abundance, right? I'm just showing you capital and labor abundance. But you got material abundances. You can have, there's also like human capital, human know-how. There's entrepreneurialism that goes into making things, right? So like in order to, you can have the capital in the buildings, we also need to have the entrepreneur who's going to be venturing and creating this kind of stuff. Kind of innovative engine in the society, right? So what I'm trying to show you is there's many different types of factors of production that go into producing something. And what I'm doing here now, just for example space, is I'm just condensing this down to two factors. But this kind of model could be expanded to think about many factors. You know, you could think about material abundance in something, and there could be an industry that uses that intensively. And this kind of applies, right? It's kind of an idea. So I'm showing you how it's all simplifying itself down. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually model this. I'll just jump straight to it. We're going to model it. We're going to draw diagrams to model it. And we're going to do it for two countries. So we're going to do two different models. All right. Two different models. We'll say country, we'll call it the capital intensive. We should just call it, you want to keep it simple, just call it country C and call this country L, just to keep them straight. And so we'll do country C and country L. This. We'll do a graph for each one. And what we're going to plot here, it's your first economic model. We're going to plot these goods on each axis. It doesn't really matter which one we pick. We could put steel, or you could put assembly. Assembly on the X, steel on the Y, and we'll just do the same thing to keep everything symmetric here. I'll put S and A for just to save space. But now you know, these are the industries, right? This is a two good world, a two country world. And both of these countries, like I said, so now imagine this. So we've made this simplification about the factors here of production being capital and labor only, keeping in mind that this could be very expansive, and your book does expand on it, and you'll need to know what all the factors are. You got land also, right? You can talk about farming and other things, right? But now we're just saying that in this economy, in this simplified, fictitious space, we only have capital and labor. And so each country gets an endowment, which means like, imagine like they're born, they're just gonna arrive with like a certain amount of capital, a certain amount of labor, right? And then what we're gonna plot here is what's called the PPF. So the model that we're using is called the production possibility frontier. That's the model that, that this whole thing is going to use. Now, this is also called the PPF. You'll have to be very proficient in using and analyzing and seeing how to do this PPF. So this is like, this is your econometric model, or sorry, your economic model. So yeah, the best way I found is to draw it. Is every time you get a chance, just draw it and interpret. Okay, most of like what people are going to have challenges with is actually just like in actually being able to create and interpret these things. You know, that's where people are going to get hiccup. You know, that's where your challenge might be. So take the chance to draw it. Get your pen out, draw this stuff. Okay, so so what the production possibility? What does this start to sound like? Production possibility frontier. What is this starting to sound like? What's possible, right? What's possible? Frontier. What does that mean? That means like on the edge of what's possible, right? This is on the edge of what's production possible for a given country. That's what their model is going to tell us. What's possible given their types of endowments. So, we're also going to say that country L and country C can be different sizes. Sizes are just going to be implicit, okay, in this thing. They can be different sizes. So we go ahead and pick a size. We could assume, but let's say this. So the production possibility frontier says, look, if country C, capital intensive country, was going to put all of their resources, allocate all of their capital, all of their labor into production, what's possible? So if it only makes steel, right? If it says, okay, we're just going to only make steel and that's it, then how this is going to be plotted is that means there's going to be zero assembly, right? And you're going to count up how much steel can they produce? Well, they can produce like that much steel. Okay? That's what that point is going to represent. And you're going to say, well, what's on the other side? Well, what if they only produce the assembly product? Right? What if they only produced assembly? Then you could say, well, maybe if they only make assembly, maybe they make less, right? Maybe they'd make, because they're capital intensive, maybe they'd have less, so maybe it'd be something like this, right? So they got zero steel and they got some assembly, right? This is a little bit narrow. I wish I would have made this a little bigger, but your book's going to draw everything as a straight line, okay? It makes the analysis a little easier to look at, so if we connect these 2 points, well, and this is just to make it a little easier than make it a straight line. But what all these points are on this line is they're all the combinations of possibilities. That's how you interpret that line. So, you know, I made this very small. I wish I would have made it bigger, but you know, like it's possible for them to produce zero steel and this much assembly. It's also possible for them to produce zero assembly and this much steel. And then all the lines in between, it's possible for them to produce this much assembly and that much steel, right? A point is a combination of, it has two values, right? You've got the X and Y. So this point here would be the possibility for them to, if they allocate all of their resources, then they can make that. And we're going to say that they can produce everything on that line. Now, what will they produce? That's not said here. Okay? These are just all of the possibilities. You only pick one possibility, right? It's like you could have done a million things today. You're only going to pick one of them eventually, right? You can't make zero steel or zero assembly and this much steel and make zero steel. It doesn't make sense, right? You have to pick a point on that line. That's going to be your production. So keep in mind, this is a slice in time. If there's no time dimension, it's about all the things that are possible. And the thing that's interesting in this graph, and what is really the important part of this graph, is that we capture what are called the trade-off costs, the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. Anybody know what it means?
It's like what? It's like if you make that much skill, that's the only amount of skill you make. Like just like what you're losing out on.
What you're losing out on. That's a good way to start. Yeah. I saw you raise your hand too.
Yeah, you get to sacrifice something to make another thing. You don't know how much you have to sacrifice.
That's exactly it, right? Yeah, it's like you. So the idea was that you have to give up in order to make a choice. You're not making some other choice, and that's true. And that's a very prevalent thing in economics through everything. You're always giving up something. The problem in economics is we live in a world of finite possibilities, and to some extent, right? We have constraints. We have a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of time, limited amounts of energy, and yet we have to make choices given those limitations, right? That's called scarcity, by the way. There's scarce resources and you're making decisions in scarcity. So you're going to have to give something up, right? And that's actually captured here. Do you guys see how it's captured? Well, in order to make this point here, right? So if I started here, if I started with zero assembly and all steel, if I want to make, let's just call this 1 unit of steel, right? Looks like I have to, the slope is kind of steep, so it looks like I have to give up. I have to give up more steel, right? We'll call this we'll call this 3 up here. We'll call this 2, just to make a point, a numeric point, right? That if I start with 0 assembly and I'm making 3 steel, if I want to make 1 assembly, I got to give up how much steel? Oh, oops, let me go like that. That should be a 1, 2. Let's go like that. Let's go like this. Sorry, you were right, and I drew it wrong. Let me just put this as a 1 here, just to make it so that, because that line does look steeper, right? Looks like the rise is greater than the run. I kind of drew it that way on purpose. You'll see why. But look, it looks like if this country wants to make, starting from 0, if it wants to make 1 more unit of assembly, it's going to have to give up, what, 2 units, right? 2 units of steel. That's the opportunity cost. Okay. The reason why they draw lines in these kind of graphs is because that opportunity cost you'll see is constant. It actually doesn't matter where you're, because that's the slope. Right? You see that there's a rise of 2 and a run of 1. You see that? So there's a constant opportunity cost of production here. And that opportunity cost is if you want to gain so to get one assembly, you have to give up, I'll say the opportunity cost is 2 steel. Okay. So we got the idea of like how PPF. Now let's just now we're going to build in this other country, and we're going to show you how this all like relates. I'm just jumping straight to like the end of the analytics of this for you, so that you can just have it in one presentation. So let's look at country L now. Country L is labor intensive. Assembly is, country L has a high labor endowment, right? I should have said that right. Assembly is labor intensive. They have a high labor endowment. So let's do the same thing. Let's say, well, what if they only produce this assembly? Let's say they'll produce way out here, right? Or maybe even farther. Let's just put them like way out here. Let's make them they can make a lot of assembly. If they put all of their resources into assembly, maybe they can make this much, right? So, and let's say that if they put all of their resources into steel, they could make 4 of them. Okay? So let's call this, let's say they could make 10 way out here. Just to put numbers and make it so we could calculate some slopes and things, okay? So again, if we have a constant opportunity cost here, we'll end up with something like that, right? So now I'm going to ask you, what's their opportunity cost for, what is one assembly? What's one assembly? What's their opportunity cost in terms of steel? Yeah, something like that. Think about right? 2.5, yeah, you did 4. Yeah, 10 divided by, so rise over run. They're going to give up, oh, wait a second, not 2.5. Point. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. Because look, they're going to give up, so if they want to go from 0 to 1, right? What's the slope of this line? The rise, it's 4. The slope is 4 over 10, right? That means they're gonna give up what? Yeah, they'll give up 0.4, right? 0.4. To get 1, they're gonna so to get 1, they're gonna give up 0.4, right? So you see their opportunity cost of steel. So what is this? So they're going to give up, here I got here, 0.4, right?
So not cost the same as slope.
You just think about it in terms of like, if they get 1, because you could flip it, right? I could say, what's the opportunity cost of producing steel? And I could ask, then it would be in terms of assembly, right? So it's not, the question was, is this the same as slope? It depends on like what you're asking, you know? You can flip this back and forth, right? If I'm looking at what's the opportunity cost of steel, it's going to be, then it would be in terms of assembly, right? Now I'm looking at what's the opportunity cost of making 1 assembly. It's going to be in terms of steel. It could be slope or it could be the inverse of slope, depending on what question you're asking. But so here we have what's the opportunity cost of an assembly? It's 0.4 steel. They're going to give up 0.4 steel. Look, in order for country C to produce assembly, they give up 2 steel. I haven't said the point explicitly, but do you get the point? Who's more efficient? Which country is more efficient at producing assembly? Yeah, it's country L, right? because country L is more efficient. Why? Because they have a lower opportunity cost. Go ahead.
When you're looking at this kind of thing, do you counter in the negative slope or not?
Well, so no, I'm not countering the negative slope in the sense of, well, you could do this and say, okay, let's throw a negative value on here, right? Now that's a cost. Who pays the lower cost? Or who pays the smallest cost, right? Remember, cost is going to come off your bottom line in terms of profitability, right? So I could throw a negative on it and just say, yeah, because you want to have smaller costs in absolute value, right? I mean, -2's a smaller number in real terms, but I mean, in absolute value, you want to shrink your cost, right? So this is the central idea here, and you can flip this around. Let me just tell you something. This is a little trick for all of your homework assignments, is that once you've gone through this and you found that you say, okay, country L, so let me give you the punchline. Country L, so country L has comparative advantage in assembly. I can just draw this. Let's just draw like let's draw like a chart so you can just see all this stuff. Okay, I'll just draw a chart. So you can see, like, you could do comparative advantage, and we haven't talked about absolute, but we will. Let's see, how did I do this? Did I do this right? Comparative advantage. I'm not going to draw a chart. It's too early in the morning for me to start creating new stuff. Scrap that idea. Just junk out of it. Let's get to the point here. Okay, so we found that country L has a comparative advantage in assembly, which means once you find this, that means you can automatically know that the other country has a comparative advantage in the other good. You can jump to it. Finding this solution implies that country C has a comparative advantage in steel. Okay? You cannot have a comparative advantage in all products. That does not exist, right? Because once you flip around those opportunity costs, right? Remember you said, was it the slope? And I say, no, you look at the reciprocal, right? So if I were to look back at the opportunity costs of making steel, then I would ask, how much assembly are they giving up? It's going to be the reciprocal of the slope, and so you'll end up with 1/2, and you'll end up with what is this? This is 4/10. You'll get 10 over. You'll get your 2.5 over here, right? So you'll see the opposite. So just quick to the point is that when you're doing your homework assignment, this is a nice little trick to know, because it doesn't mean that once you hash it out for one, then you can automatically jump and get the answer for the other one. Just bang, bada bing, bada boom, right? You don't need to go through all the gyrations. Just take the time to make sure you get it right on the first one, or else you mess up on the second one. Okay, go ahead.
So this is basically what our data projects will be for students.
No, this is the theory that's in Pearson. Okay? This is a theoretical model. These models are based on a lot of like high mathematics that derive and push these things out. And what I'm showing you are the graphical outputs of some of these models. And these models were basically building on this idea that is highlighted in your data project. You'll see I hope that everyone will start to see like a very tight relationship between your data project and between this theory. get, I remember on the metrics for the data project, you get capital intensity of the industry times the capital endowment. And then you get a share of their exports, right? As a ratio of their, it's a exports of that industry as a share of, so countries that have a lot of capital intensity and high capital endowment for that industry, that should be a higher share. Does that make sense? Like should be like it should, the theory would say that should be a higher share. Same with the labor. Like if they have, if that industry has a high labor intensity and they have a high labor endowment for that industry, then that share should be higher. That's what we would expect theory to show us, right? This idea was extended, and I'm going to give you some more extensions. Nunn, in that paper, that Nunn 2007 paper, he extended it to institutions. So he said that there's some industries that are more contract intensive. You think about, and he measured that by the number of goods that it takes to produce within that industry. So you think of like some industries have like a lot of different little parts, right? A lot of different suppliers, and you got to go negotiate contracts with all your suppliers. There's just tons of suppliers in that industry. Now, every one of those suppliers is a contract you have to write. So that's a more contractual intensive industry than something where there's like just one person that you're going to deal with, right? And so you think that now you think that so that's a within industry variation of contract intensity. And at the same time, countries have different rules of law where contracts are more enforced. And so you might expect that, you know, countries that have higher contractual enforcement, have better rules of law, might have some type of advantage in producing industries that are more complex. And that's what he found. Okay, that's what his paper was about. You can see some of that stuff if you dig into it. The paper you can find, I can make it available if anyone's interested, but that's what the crux of his paper. Now I'm just scalping part of that result with the labor and capital intensities. But that was the main point of it was actually contract intensity. You can see that this idea actually you can apply, the thing I want you to take away is you can apply this to a lot of different dimensions, be it contract intensity or land intensity, land intensity, land endowments. Do you know who here's a quick pop quiz. Do you know which country has the biggest land endowment for for land that's suitable for agriculture? Which one? Yeah, which country? Yeah, which country has the most land? Let's just go look it up on Wikipedia. The most land that's suitable for agriculture.
I'm thinking Russia, but Russia's probably much of that land ain't suitable for farming.
I cannot think of the one. What's that? Is it arable? No. Country. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna mess that up. Arable. Arable land by country. Oh, this is arable land percentage. What country has the most arable land? Look, United States. We have so this is just by maybe hectare or something. Maybe a land kilometers squared. We have 1.6 million. Then India, China, right? But so we lead the world in arable land in terms of our endowment. You know, so we should be the farmers of the world, right? Which in fact we pretty much are. When our breadbasket makes a ton of agriculture. It should kind of lead you to believe that we have a comparative advantage in agriculture, which we do. We also have big open lands and big plots and big machinery to cut that stuff. I mean, they can cut corn at like 30 miles an hour with big, huge bales and shuck it and take it off and churn the stuff and put it back in the ground. Like, I mean, we have crazy technology on top of that to harvest all those acres, but you know, this would also make you pause. I want to just go a little bit deeper here. Make you pause and think about like where we're headed in terms of our development, our economic development. You know, we're entering into the information age, right? Some say we've arrived. I don't think we've arrived yet. You know, the artificial intelligences that are coming out are within the last like handful of years in terms of like the capacity. And, you know, I think to the degree that you believe artificial intelligence is going to shape the next wave of things and automations, I want you to think about, you know, what would be the resource there? What would be the resource? If AI, artificial intelligence is what? It's what kind of intensive? Well, I would say data intensive, right? Data intensive. And what you see, and I'll just tell you, is that you see that, yeah, we do have, one thing that we do have is we have very strong privacy laws here in the States. So a lot of your privacy, they, trust me, they know a lot about us, right? Like if they want to find stuff out, but it's not quite so open in terms of like, you know, being able to combine and use all types of data. And there's restrictions more here in terms of a lot of data, which is probably like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not. I like having some privacy too. But you know, you have other places like China. Think about the size of their data footprint, the size of the number of their consumers in the place. And let me just tell you something. You know, you walk into China, like you go to buy something. Do you know how you buy it? You can buy it with your face. They got a camera. Okay, I've seen this in action. I can show you a video. So you go to buy something, you pick it up, and this is becoming like widespread. You pick it up. It's not like a little tiny niche. This is like being applied. You pick it up, you go there, they type it in, look at the screen, recognizes your face in a matter of seconds, like a matter of like 2 seconds out of, think about all the billions of people in China. They can recognize your face accurately enough to execute a financial transaction on your bank account and do that accurately and quickly at speed. And all you do is look at the screen and then touch a button, accept, and you walk away. That's how quick it is to buy something. Now that shows you actually some really big things that, you know, they're wrangling big scopes of data. They're doing it very efficiently, and they're putting it into production, right? So, you know, and the other thing we see is automation, right? Machine automation. So one thing that, anyway, there's some real important topics here, but let's jump back to this model real quick. I could get sidetracked, and I don't want to do that. The point of this model is this, okay? I didn't get down to the main point. So we talked about that we can find out who's got a comparative advantage. We need to define absolute advantage. I could get talking about trade stuff. It's super, anyway, this model has some applications. We'll talk about it hopefully real quick. What time do we finish? 10:30, right? Okay, we got a little time. So absolute advantage. So we got comparative advantage, low opportunity cost. Absolute advantage means you can make more of it. That's period. Who's got the absolute advantages here in what industries? Take a look. Those are, anyone online, you're welcome to pipe in. I haven't heard from you guys in a while. I hope you're still there. I'm sorry, I hope I'm attentive enough to you guys there. Who's got the absolute advantage? Country L has an absolute advantage in what? In assembly? Country L has an absolute advantage in assembly because they can produce 10 and country C can produce 2, right? That's true. Country L has an absolute advantage in assembly because they can produce more assembly. Anybody else want to pipe in? Take a look. Shot?
Would they also have an advantage for steel?
Yes, they do. They do, and that's the point, is that they also have an absolute advantage in steel, because they can make 4 and country C can only make 3. You see? And this is in your data project why we needed to divide by the exports for that, the total exports for that country. Because what you have here is you have a scale. You see, country L is probably a bigger country, right? The bigger country can obviously always produce more. That doesn't mean they can do it better. Better is defined how? Better is defined by opportunity cost. That's the point. Data-wise, to kick that scale out, to get rid of that absolute advantage, because we're not trying to measure absolute advantage. If we were, we just compare total trade statistics and say who makes the most, right? We want to talk about comparative advantage. So how do we get that absolute out? We just divide by the total exports, and it normalizes things. That's what's called a normalization. Before you had apples and oranges, and you're trying to make it apples and apples by normalizing things to be on a same scale, which is the share of exports. Hope that's all clear. It relates. The data and the stuff all relates. So now we still haven't come to the main point of the model, which I don't care what they say in your book about economics being a normative or positive science. Did you guys come across that? They said you should be, normative is like what should be.
Yeah.
Positive is what is, right? And there's this big hype in economics. A lot of people still, I think they're full of themselves, man. I think it's totally headstrong righteous to say that we're just a positive science and not normative. You know, it's like we're supposed to walk in without any biases and say, well, this is just like the science of things, right? That's a positive, like the sky is blue and we're going to make a science out of this. Yes, that is true, right? That's a true statement. If I say the sky should be pink or the sky should be blue, that's normative. Yeah, the homework's going to say, and your book's going to say things real cut and dry. They're going to say economics is a science where we make positive statements about what is, not about normative statements, what should be. I'm going to call it. Because because every economic policy, we're not just studying things for anything. The whole point is to give people some type of insights. Specifically, economists, we talk to people that are in position of power, that have decisions to make trade policy. So you have to think, why is this relevant? It's relevant because maybe people need to make some choices, right? Some leaders need to make some choices. And so you're going to give them this model and say, this is how it is, under the assumption that, okay, now you're going to make some choices. And what choices are made under this model? There is a policy prescription under this model that's incredibly important. And that's this. It's that if both countries, and this is what I talked about before, if both countries only do what they're good at doing, if you only do what you're good at doing, if you only do what you have a comparative advantage in, and that's it, you specialize, then that means as a whole world, the world has increased the amount of pie it can produce because everybody's doing what they can do most efficiently, right? And then the idea is that if you trade, so if you specialize in what you're good at, that means what? That means country C should make what? Country C they should specialize in steel, right? And country L specialize in assembly, right? Specialization means that their production is 3 and 0. Okay? And it means that country L's production is 0 and 10. That's what specialization means. And then you specialize and then you trade. And what you find is that when you specialize in trade, it's possible to say, for instance, and I'm just drawing this hypothetically, I didn't work it out, but you can work it out in your homeworks, okay? I'm just showing you here. It's possible for country C to consume this basket and for country L to consume this basket. And what do you notice about those baskets? Graphically, what do you notice? What makes those baskets so dang special? What's that?
Because they're in the middle.
In the middle, look, they're beyond they're both beyond the possibility frontier. They're both points are beyond the possibility frontier. You see, a basket, so here's the possibility frontier. This is if they put everything they have into that production, right? Can they produce this basket in here? Yes, they can, but that's inefficient. That means they're wasting resources. Can they produce this one out here? No way, they can't. Because this is the frontier of what they're able to produce. You see? And so by specialization and trade, it's theoretically possible for both countries to be strictly better off. That means everybody wins. Now you tell me that's not normative. I come up to you and I say, okay, hey, let's specialize and everybody wins. Okay? And in fact, what I'm showing you here today is the dominant US trade policy that was pushed out very heavily through most of the developing world, through all kinds of the developing parts of the world, which was to specialize. And we pushed this out with help of the World Bank. I don't know, you know the World Bank? And the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Basically, these are like lenders of last resort. So when countries fall into crises and they run into some big problem, they need a loan, they go to the World Bank, they go to the IMF, say, hey, bail us out, right? That's what happened. Is actually maybe in some cases we were hoping that they had some problems, and they had some problems, and they come to the World Bank and they say, hey, we want a loan, and they say, okay, we'll give you a loan. But you know, we got this policy here. We got this good idea for you. Why don't you guys specialize? Why don't you specialize? So what that means in real terms is you go to places like Tanzania. They had this Typer oil field, and they said, okay, you guys shut that down. You shut that down, you get rid of your oil production there, your oil refineries. You guys can't do it very well anyway. You specialize in what you're good at, leave that for somebody else. And that was the prescription, right? So a lot of countries bought into this, and to some extent we have too. You think about the offshoring of U.S. manufacturing, is a lot of it's driven by these ideas of specialization in what we're comparatively have the advantage in, which has historically been not in labor-intensive things. There's other countries that have a lot more cheaper labor out there than we do, right? So they can obviously make things more efficiently than us. So let's ship it over there. The problem actually is that the one dimension that these lack is time. Time is not here. And the concept of economic development is an evolution over time. You see? So what you have is actually you have specialization, but then what I was showing you before is that you get these other growth and development economists that say economic diversity is tightly correlated to development. So, you know, you want to develop and evolve, you need to have like a diversity of things. And actually, I found this in my own research. I found that actually having, you know, a bunch of industrial connections helps you to have some comparative advantages, which is kind of to say that, you know, it doesn't make, it seems pretty intuitive, right? Like, and think about the next wave of things. So before we had industrialization, we had all these machines coming out, and now we had these machines, and now we ship them overseas. And now the next wave of innovation, you know, it's going to be automation. I got to ask you guys, what factories are we going to automate? We ship them over, we ship them out. How are we going to join the next wave of automation if we shipped everything? You see, we can't automate factories we don't have. I mean, you see, so there's all kinds of different dynamics in in actual economic development that actually in some ways run counter to the theories in this that you've been presented, okay? And just don't buy for a second that this is all just a bunch of positive, non-normative stuff. It's not. It's very normative. There are winners and losers here. You know, this is to say everyone's a winner. Other people would say actually specialization may not be that way. All right, so just keep that all in mind. These are concepts that have shaped the world, though. They've shaped the world and what we live in. They've really been like the backbone for like trade policy, and it's impossible to understand how the world has played like a geopolitical role and a geopolitical economic role in developing the developing world without understanding this concept. The one country that didn't stand by this was China. I said, the hell with that policy. And yeah, I mean, you know, I think they defied a lot of the stuff. Anyway, are we over? No, we got 5 minutes. Right? Okay. So I know I was just like, trying to get a lot in. Okay. It's like, it's one of the biggest like factors that shaped like the world as we know it today, though, you know, in real terms. You know, this idea being pushed onto other countries and, you know, and where we're at and where we're going, you're going to hear this kind of stuff a lot. So I just want you to be all aware of the countervailing stuff. Technically, though, you're going to just need to be able to calculate the comparative advantages, say like who's got the comparative advantages, understand how to find the opportunity costs, understand how to find the absolute advantages. So that's what's in your homework assignment. It's up on Pearson's. And you guys go ahead and tackle that, okay? And then I'm not going to talk anymore about trade stuff, but the next time we come to class, like how I want to schedule it, and just so everybody knows, because I want this to be super productive, is I want you guys to bring me some issues you ran into. So you ran into some problem on the homework. I want us to spend some time doing and covering that. I'm intentionally not, you know, bombarding every detail in class. I'm intentionally doing this, okay? Sound like a deal? All right, let's give it a break. All right, see you guys next time.
Have a good one.
Okay,
Bye.
yes, you as well.
The only real problem I had with homework was just one question was like, it was like graph the following points, and it was like y equals 2 minus 1.25x. And I tried looking through the whole book. I was like, for everything, I was like,
No, that's a, so y equals what?
y, it was like y equals 2 minus 1.25x.
Okay.
I was like, I looked everywhere for like formulas and everything. I was like, I
No, there's no formula. You know how to plot this?
have no idea. And that's what the question was. I was like, I spent like 20 minutes. I was like, I just got to get it wrong. I can't.
No, and this is like a math refresher. Is you just to plot this, you know what this is, you know what shape this is?
I have no idea.
It's the shape of a line. You know, like y is equal to mx plus b.
Yeah, I
Right.
looked that up. Right.
Well, this is a slope.
Mhm.
This is an intercept. Whatever's multiplicative on x is the slope.
Okay.
Whatever's additive is the intercept.
Okay.
So you can plot this by just picking off values and plotting it. So you could do, so this is x, this is y. You go, what's the value of y when x is 0? So put in a 0. What's the value of y?
X is 0, probably 0.
So that would be y is equal to 1, sorry, y is equal to 2 minus 1.25 times 0.
So the
You
2.
know, yeah, that's the 0, that's 2. Bam. Right.
Okay. And then you just.
And then you could also do it the opposite way if you wanted. And the easiest way is, if you want to plot, is just do the axes and then draw the line.
Okay.
That's the easiest way. So you could just do, well, set y equal to 0. You know, 0 is equal to, so we'll just do 0 is equal to 2 minus 1.25x.
And that's just
Subtract.
math from there.
Yeah, 1.25x is equal to 2. See,
Got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and then draw it.
This
Sure.
last class, so my first step is you
Sorry. What's that?
need to get the textbook first and then sign up for the person.
Oh, okay. Did you email me?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I had somebody email me about. Okay. So, so you need to get the textbook, right?
Yes, sir.
But check the bookstore. Did you go there?
I didn't check yet. I will.
Yeah, the bookstore would be the best. So the bookstore you can get the card and then
It comes with the website and the book.
Okay.
It's like a combo.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
get a code and you just go to Pearson and type in the code and then put in the code, his code, and fill that up.
Okay. That's good.
yeah, just follow this real careful here. You'll see that it's you'll see I've got my class. I don't know where is that.
ID, right?
Yeah, class ID.
Okay.
You got that. I think on the when you go out from the bookstore, the bookstore also has like some way to get like an access code. So you have to like log in with their site, put some information in from keep your receipt.
Mhm.
That's got the important numbers, and then like go to their website, put it in there, and then it'll show you what your access code is. And you take that Pearson access code and
I'll put it in Pearson. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just got a quick question about that data project.
Sure.
You said it's going to be due Monday?
Yeah, I might just knock it like a day or two. So
Okay, and then what's
it's not gonna be too much though. It's just
You posted the directions.
I was just wondering like if it's going to be kind of detailed about how we're going to do it because I'm not very
Yeah.
comfortable.
yeah. I'll just it'll be it will be probably as detailed as I can.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it'll say it'll give you kind of like I'm trying to write the context in there too, so people.
Yeah, because I have to admit that's not really my comfort zone. So
No, it's all
I'll
right.
try my best.
That's all right. I'd say try it sooner than later because
cool.
if you run into some like technical hiccup, like it's going to take some kind of the add-ons,
Mhm.
which I don't know if you got the add-on that we put on last class or not, but there's like the data analytic add-on, which you just need to like enable. And there's like, you don't want to run into like a technical issue
And then be behind.
and then be like, oh crap, I can't do it because I didn't have that thing. And
You know when you're gonna be posting instructions for it.
I'm posted today. I wrote it up. I just need to proof it one time and I need to complete it myself before I assign it.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.